So I'm still here, so never mind. So thank you again for the introduction, and just going to chit chat with you a little bit, and then we will have some more chit chat, as in question time, after I finish talking. Or you can interject at any time, basically. Is that okay? Is that okay with you?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. You can answer from time to time. We won't we won't bite you. All right.
If you're sure.
Okay. Right. So okay, I was just looking over to your YouTube channel over there, actually. So the Adventist Church, and making the Adventist Church more applicable or more practical for our children, it has always been a challenge. I tell you why it's a challenge, and then I go to some solution. It's a challenge because one of the creed that we hold, it's not even a creed, a belief, because in the Adventist Church, we do not have a creed. We have what we call the 28 fundamentals. Um, the difference between fundamentals and creed is that creeds tend to be set in stone. Fundamentals are able to be changed. Are you with me? So every 5 years at the General Conference, those can be changed. But how do we make this more applicable for our children? The challenge that we face is that the Adventist Church, out of all denominations and churches across the planet, claim to be God's remnant church, okay, which means God's last day church. In that statement alone, we believe that we have a message for everyone else. Are you with me? So we are not waiting for someone to come to us with a message. We have a message for everyone else. So there is a problem. Oftentimes, let me go to the older end of the spectrum, when your children are in their teens and in their youth, they may begin to, and I should have clarified with you, what age group are we dealing with? Shanice, can you help me? What age group are we dealing with here?
Most of the children in our church are between, I would say, 5 to 11. That's most of them, but we do have the spectrum from 0 to all the way up.
Okay, so that will help me a little bit. Let me deal with the far end of the spectrum, the teens and youth. Then, by the time you get to that age, and if you have any children in that age group, or sisters or brothers, at that age they begin to question things. They want to question everything. And oftentimes, one of the challenges that we have as parents is, how do we deal with these questions? It is no longer good enough just to say, well, it's in the Bible and you should believe it. Or it's the Adventist Church and that's the truth. Or Ellen G. White says it, so therefore we should accept it. Those things worked back in the 60s and in the early 70s, and just about worked in the 70s, let alone the 80s, 90s, and the 20th century, 21st century. So as parents, we need to do more to give more answers, more qualifying answers to our children when they're asking questions. Now, we can be lazy at times as parents, because sometimes we have not taken the time to learn the thing for ourselves. So we do not know the answer, and not wanting to be transparent and say, look, I really don't know what that means. We try to make up an answer and try to, fob around it. Don't do that. If you don't know it, you don't know it. I remember when I came from a Baptist background into the Adventist Church. So when I came to join my mother here in England back in the 70s, 71 actually, we, of course, were from the Baptist tradition, so me going to church on a Sunday. But one of the things that my mom used to do is she used to do a course called the VOP course, the Voice of Prophecy. It's now called DBS, okay? Discovery Bible School is now called. But back then it was called VOP, Voice of Prophecy. And she used to do this correspondent course. And she used to try to get me involved in studying the Bible. I was into sports. I was into cricket. I was going to play for the West Indies. I was going to play for Warwickshire. That was my dream. I had trials for Warwickshire. I was going to go that way. The Sabbath came in. Racism and Sabbath prevented those things from going forward. But let me shelve that for a moment. Come back to the VOP courses. She used to get all these answers correct, as she posts off the thing, get the answer back. And she enticed me into actually doing the course as well for myself as like a competition. Who could get the most answer correct? Are you with me? And for me, that was interesting because I said, okay, I'm sure I could get more than her. So that's how I got into Bible study, not because I wanted to study the Bible, but because I wanted to get more answers than my mom. And so it was a kind of fun thing. Because I came from a single parent background, so it was just me and my mom. And we sent off do our lessons, and we just put it in the post, send it off. We couldn't wait to get the answers back, what I mean, to see who got the most. So that's how I got into Bible study. So, some people say, well, that's a wrong way to get into Bible study. But no, it's to try and engage the child at the level the child is at. You don't want to try for the child to be at your level, and when the child is down here and you're up there, and you want them to fast track up to you. No, you have to deal with the child exactly where they are at. And talking about that, one of the resource that we have at the North England Conference in the Personal Ministers Department is a cartoon genre. It's a cartoon type magazine called Trouble on the Blue Planet. Okay, now they have another 3 or 4 to go with that one. And that one tells the story. It's a cartoon form. I remember the first time I tried to give one to a parent because they were talking to me about their child, and the child was not engaging in study, in devotion, and finding it boring, and and so forth and so forth and so on. And I said, well, try this, and they said, and they opened and said, cartoon? No, I don't want my child we don't have time for cartoons. We don't have time for that. I said, it's biblical stuff. I said, it doesn't matter. If you get them in this one, they may want to read the real cartoon. I said, absolute disaster. So I don't know what happened to that parent and that child, but for me, that was a recipe for a disaster, basically. You start where the child is at, and then you move them to where they need to go. That was a principle of Christ with his disciples. As you read the Bible and you read through the gospel, you realize that Jesus did not tell the disciples everything on the first day, or the second day, or the first year. It wasn't until about year 3, before they realized that this man is going to be crucified and going up to Jerusalem, and they were with him all the time. And then they tried to stop him from going. So you have to take the child where the child is and move them in to where you would like them to be creatively. The Adventist Church, though, with its many doctrines, 28 doctrines, and many more teachings than 28, by the way. 28 was just the core teachings. We have much more than that. How do we then make the Adventist Church exciting for children? Well, coming from a Baptist background, when I came into the Adventist Church in my first couple of years, I was lost, basically. I have never, ever found a church or a group of people so talented in all my days. When I came into the church, it was like, what? I mean, everyone could speak, they could sing, play an instrument. If they can't sing, they can play an instrument. If they can't play the instrument, they can preach. If they can't preach, they can teach. And if they can't teach, they can play volleyball or basketball, or they can play table tennis very, very well. And what could I do? Absolutely nothing. I came in and I felt lost in the church. Totally lost, and my mom didn't know what was going on. She would go off to the choir practice, because she was into singing, and left me with the young people at the old Camp Hill Church. That we used to have two basements back then, the old church, and down would be the youth room, the youth hall. Are you with me? And they'll play all kind of games down there, and old piano was there, they're playing and singing and doing everything. And I was just amazed by these talented young people. I mean, I was just taken aback, really. And I remember I used to go home and I used to cry. I said, Lord, I have no gift. You know, oh, look at all these gifted children and youth and people my age. And I have got no gift. He said, you gave me nothing. You know, I can't play an instrument. I can't sing. I can't even preach. I was so shy that even in discussion, I used to be at the back of the room and I wouldn't say a word. I was so shy. And would you believe that? Look at me now. What a transformation. If if somebody tells me that God does not exist, I would want to, that was the old day. I would want to give them a headbutt, but that was the old day. Don't do it. Don't do it, whatever you do. God exists because if God can transform me from out of my cocoon and my little shell and shyness to bring me into where I am now, I tell you, there must be a God. There truly is a God. And I now believe that God has a talent for every single individual. Every single person is a talent waiting for you. And all you've got to do first is to discover God. So part of parenting is to help the child or their children to discover God, to discover God in their own way, to explore with them foolish questions. You know, who's God's mother, for example? Is a question that I used to ask. Where did God come from? You know. Now I remember hearing when I was back in the day. This is way back in the day. A friend of mine asking their parent, their father, where did that God come from? And the answer they got was like the total disaster. It was like a slam answer. Are you with me? God didn't come from anywhere. God just is. Yes, this is true, but too blunt and not invoking the child's imagination. How about saying, well, there's some things in this world that really do not have a beginning or an end. And although it's a mystery, you may not understand it now, but that's God. God has no parent. He has no start or no finish. He just is. And if you try as a child, and I just say that, if you try, imagine someone who does not have a beginning. Even as an adult, our head would hurt because everything that we know have a source, a start, and a beginning. And to throw to a child age 11 or 10 or 12 that there is a being that exists that does not have a beginning, it's difficult to grasp. Are you with me? So you have to find creative ways of doing that. There is a series of lessons by Karen Lewis, which goes with the adult Bible study. The adult Bible study is called Lift Up Jesus. But the children one is something about meeting Jesus. I forgot the title now. Brilliant series for children, absolutely fantastic for children. Some parents says, well, we won't play videos, Bible videos for children on a Sabbath because it will teach them to watch television on a Sabbath. And I said to myself, what on earth is wrong with these people? Now, in pandemic and lockdown, how foolish does that sound? Now with me, how strange it sounded because we are watching TV every Sabbath. You know what I mean? That's the only way we can get our service. So we need to be very careful what we say to our children. The Adventist church for me, there is no church as resourced as the Adventist church. And I'm not saying that because I'm Adventist. I'm saying that because it is true. It is absolute. I work in the community with different churches, Pentecostal Church of God, New Testament Church, Baptist Church, Methodist Church, you name it. I still work in the community with all these leaders, and I still go to meetings. Well, not for the past couple of weeks because I've been away, but I still get invited to their meetings and to come and share with them and so forth. And they would say to me, Pastor Simpson, the Adventist church is such a selfish church. And I said, why? They said, because you have all those resources and you guys just keep it to yourself. you do not share your wisdom. We got videos on parenting, we've got stuff on children's ministry. We've got summer programs, we've got Bible schools, we've got all these things to make the church creative, and still we are complaining. I believe parents in, for example, this is Ladywood Church. So let me commission you and challenge you at the same time. Each year, what about, I'm not sure if you do this, and when I was pastoring, I would encourage my members to take 1 week off, a holiday, 1 week holiday, and donate that to God. 1 week holiday during school term, school break, donate that holiday to God and run a Bible school. Run a Bible school, not just for the church members, children, but also for the community also. And be as creative as they're pre-packed programs that you can purchase. And, you apply to me, to the personal ministers department. You don't have to pay for that program yourself. We give you the funds to pay for that program. Creative program, where you're dramatizing God's creation story, or you're talking about the parables. There are different themes. And this is the way to get the church members' children involved, and also get the community members involved in church and in their projects. So there's so much ways to be involved as far as getting children involved is concerned. My wife, when I was pastoring in Manchester, and I pastored the church for 10 years, and I had a district of churches, minimum 3, sometimes 4, I would have. And she became the children's ministries departmental leader for my church. And she held that post for a better part of 10 years. And one of the things that she would say to me as a pastor, we used to do budget, when it's about November, October time, we start doing our budget in our churches, right? And it's always a touch and go time. And we used to give a good £200 for the year for children's ministry. And she was children's ministry. And one day in church, she stood up, in the board business meeting, and she said, you know what? £200 is not enough. Is that how much you value your children? Just to give them £200 for the year as a budget? But personal ministers were getting like £300 or £400. So, we said comparatively, and she said, no. She said, no. Let's do this. Personal ministries, yes, you have a budget for maybe £200 or £300 or £500. But then you also have 10 campaigns where they spend thousands of pounds. That's also personal ministries. You also have camp meeting, which is personal ministries. You also have other programs in the community, which is community services and personal ministries. So even though you get this much, but when you look at the year's program, you do more with personal ministries than you do with children ministries. So I said, well, what are you asking? She said, we need more money. And the church says, no, we haven't got it. We cannot afford any more money. And in business meeting, she stood up one day, and I learned from her. She said, okay, let me paint a picture for you, she said. She said, you don't have the money now to nurture your children and for us to keep them in church, to do creative programs to keep. You don't have the money now. But give them 10 years from now, when they are in their teens and become a youth, and they leave the church, you will go and pitch a tent that will cost you £25,000 to £30,000 to pitch a tent to try to win them back, right? But you don't have the money now. But you'll find it then. I learned a lesson then. What do you say? I must admit, the following year, the children's ministry's budget had increased significantly. And what I'm saying to you, the church, is that we need to learn to invest in our children now and support our parenting, classes and parenting programs. That's why I said to Pastor, wherever I am in the world, I will come and talk with you, because I do believe in this ministry. And so, yes, even children's ministry, if you apply for some funding from the personal ministers department, you will get a little something. Because I do believe that we should invest while the child is still young. The Jesuits says, give me a child before they are 6 years old, and I'll show you what they can become. That's what the Jesuit says. So in the school of the Jesuits, they begin to indoctrinate from age 6. But they took that from the rabbis. Okay, that's a biblical principle. Rabbi means teacher. And in the Hebrew concept, they will begin to mentor your child from age 5 through to 6 and upwards. Are you with me? Because they know those early years are very, very telling and are very important as you begin to etch and sketch the love of God and the character of God on the mind of your child. May God be with you. I'm going to leave some time for questions. There's much more I could say. And if it was a presentation formal, I could have slides galore. But I just wanted to talk with you and to hear from you now. So let me pause for a little while, okay?
Okay, thank you, Pastor, for that chit chat with us.
That's right.
I'm not sure if we're still streaming or if we can stop the stream.